Mhm.
All right, we are good to go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to part two of Mayne to Mayne, conversation between myself, Dr. Jeff Menzise, and my good brother, the Terrence Dashon Howard, actor extraordinaire, and definitely one of our Renaissance men of the 20th and 21st centuries. Brother, welcome back to the platform. Appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule to have this conversation with me.
Well, this is a pleasure. I've come into this world for one reason, that's to disseminate the truth. And
Yep.
any form that we can use to help accelerate that, so that we can get to the point in time where we're supposed to be based upon our relative intelligence and understanding of ecology. I love to talk about this with anyone that wants to have a conversation.
Nice. And we had a wonderful time in that first session. We covered a lot of ground and the feedback has been phenomenal. I mean, I've shared with you a lot of the feedback that's come in, but it's been so much feedback that I couldn't even send you everything. But people from all walks of life. We have chemists that are chiming in that were totally amazed by your breaking down the periodic table. You spoke about it in octaves and intervals. We have teachers and educators who are talking about sharing it with their fellow teachers and the students as far as the mathematics is concerned. We've got other people who are aspiring actors who are listening, to the prolific nature of your mind and understanding that they too, you've actually given people permission to be more than the box that people are most comfortable with holding them in. And so, I mean, I had an elder, he once told me back in the day, he used to keep sweat lodges. His name is Boyce Brunson in Nashville. And he used to keep a sweat lodge in his mother's backyard. He actually built it for like her 93rd birthday or something. So we're down there, me and these two twin elders and him, down there taking young willow trees and pulling them out, bending them over to build the actual dome. And we used to have lodges back there all the time, lodges. But anyway, he told me one day, he said, you know what? He said, you can count the number of apples in the number of seeds in the apple, but you can never count the number of apples in the seed. And so when I look at our conversation, the first one, that's a seed. And we'll never know how many apples are going to blossom from that one seed that was planted that day, but it's guaranteed to be an infinite amount. People are going to be eating off of that conversation forever. And so, I mean, I really appreciate you, having the courage to come forward and, and live your truth, brother, and present it in the way that you do.
Well, what I would love to do is now offer the second course to that first bite. Those were appetizers. Now get more into the delicate nature of some of these prepared meals.
Nice. So if you don't mind, I wanted to just a couple of things that were brought up that people were interested in to get knowing a little bit more about, just as a little teaser on the front end, just to put the period at the end of that first conversation before we take this deep dive today into the platonic solids and the wave conjugations and the interactive software that you have embedded in your book. Is that all right?
Yes, I love that.
Okay. So, people were definitely interested in, what you started off with talking about your motivation for acting and how you weren't really interested in becoming an actor at first. And your mother kind of pushed you to that. And then you made a statement about your purpose as being, in the science and inventing and helping people to basically heal. Can you talk a little bit more about, that identified purpose as it relates to science? And how have you been able to wed the two, the acting and the science together?
Well, one of the good sides that came with acting, even though, like, there's an old proverb that says no one does a single thing for a single motive. Everyone has multiple motives for each action. I became an actor because I thought that I wanted to get my mother's approval and didn't recognize that the platform that would give me by dancing in and out of other characters, changing my own natural homeostasis chemical state, when I would have to increase the cortisol levels, by playing Lucius and all the things that came with that, or decreasing those levels and increasing the dopamine or some of those other epinephrine relaxative chemicals that come about inside the body. And then I realized that our entire body is a chemical processing plant.
Yes.
Our skin cells, what do they produce? They produce a proteins, keratin. Our liver, our kidneys produce renin. Our liver converts that renin into angiotensin 1, that goes into the body, up into the lungs. It becomes angiotensin 2 and aldosterone. So everything is a chemical processing plant, every structure, because it's utilizing the chemicals, which are nothing more than motion of either electricity or magnetism, and where we balance each other. That's all the chemicals are. Everything is just motion. Everything comes from two motions. Electricity isn't electricity. Electricity is the result of a particular motion, of a centripetal motion. And magnetism, it's not a real thing. Magnetism is the effects of centrifugal motion. Mm. All everything is either spinning to the right or spinning to the left, contracting or expanding. And when people can understand that and recognize that, I think Plato once said that life was really about filling up a vessel and pouring the vessel out. All universal function is filling up something and dispelling it. So I want mankind to understand that. I also want mankind to understand that because of the understanding we have, we are responsible for our actions and everything that takes place in our actions. So as becoming an actor, I remember I had a conversation with Lorenz Tate about Old Dog, the character Old Dog that he played in Menace II Society. And I said, are you worried at all about people imitating? How many young men might have imitated Old Dog and the lives that may have been lost as a result of it? He said, I think about it a lot, but I'm not responsible for how somebody takes a character that I've played. But I found that I think I am responsible for what I put out on that screen. Mm-hmm. And so it's just balanced, understanding chemistry, understanding changing your emotion. And then I wanted to understand, okay, well, how does that affect and how's that translated in color? How's that translated in shape? How is that translated in the overall cosmogony of everything? Because everything had to be connected. So that's where I kind of crossed those bridges a little bit, if that wasn't too far off.
No, I follow you, brother. Because I mean, especially when you were talking about the spinning in and spinning out, the filling up and the emptying. And so I saw when you were saying that, like you're saying, going in and out of character, literally manipulating your own physiology in order to manifest a different type of personality. And that's a very deep level, because I'm sure that all actors probably do that, but not all do it consciously and understand that that's actually what's happening to their being at the time. I mean, there's a story about Tupac when he played Bishop in Juice, and how, that some say he never came back from that. I think it was Tretch from Naughty by Nature that spoke on that after Pac played that character, he never came all the way back to being T-U-P-A-C Shakur, the descendant of Black Panthers. He went a little bit deeper into that thug life world.
Well, think about it. We have a number of different genes in our body that isn't activated, that becomes activated as a result of necessity. A number of genes. And sometimes playing a particular character puts you in a particular emotional pressure condition. And as a result of those raised cortisol levels or depleted dopamine levels or raised dopamine levels, other genes are activated. And genes are still part of him. Even though he's playing a character, he can only play it based upon his own understanding and common frame of reference. So it doesn't just affect the physical mind and the chemical composition that's taking place. That chemical composition also presses upon the individual genes. And you get like if you don't eat for 4 days, what happens? Particular genes kick in for survival. That are necessary for us, that will allow us to eat things that we typically would not be able to break down. That changes how the bladder is going to react, how the pancreas is going to react, how everything will react as far as secreting what's necessary to break down certain things. So everything is affected by everything. And as a character, I hope that I've affected people, because even when I've played a bad guy, I've always played him from the perspective of somebody trying to get something done out of frustration. I've rarely played someone. The only person I played that was absolutely evil was Trumpy in Idlewild. Trumpy was was evil.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, because he had a hatred for life. It's like Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer in Tombstone, some who wanted revenge for being born and being live in this existence. And many people out there, many of the people that might watch this, they are angry, for having to be born and put into this situation called life, because they're not recognizing the fact that out of a 500 million sperm and a 24-hour blind marathon as a male and a 72-hour to 128-hour blind marathon as a female, going from here, the distance from the earth to the moon, as far as going from the vaginal cavity all the way up to reaching where the egg will reach. That's a distance comparable of going from here to the moon, going 3 or 4 millimeters, a minute at best. And each one of us won that race, 500 million man race, climbing over our dead brothers and sisters, not being defeated, following the purpose of I'm getting to this egg no matter what. I'm getting to this egg, and when I get to this egg and hit that corona radiata, I'm going to blast myself in there, and the zona pellucida, I'm going to push myself inside of there. And even if it breaks my head, I'm going to get there. That's the determination that we have to have, because that's what we got to life with. And when people forget that they won a 500 million man race, they forget how powerful they are. You come into this life as a winner.
Right. And see, what you're bringing up now is, again, in our last conversation, you maybe go back to my reference on African psychology. And when I'm teaching developmental psychology, human development, child and adolescent development, most of the Western theories started off at birth. They say from 0 to 2, every stage always starts at birth. But what I always tell people is that no, your developmental trajectory began with your very first ancestor, and everything that they've experienced is culminated in this current life that you have. And so what you were just speaking about, that whole consciousness, or that the experience of being in that 500 million person race or being race, and then having to do what you like, climb over your dead brothers and sisters, the other sperm that don't make it and they die. That is a part of the developmental process that a lot of people overlook, especially with the Western science. You maybe think of something else. So the concept of personality, right, is based on the word persona, which is Greek for mask. And so people think that, what you're talking about, the acting, is just you put on a mask, you play a role, you take the mask off, and that's just all it is. And not really understanding the depth of it. And what I'm coming to understand just in this conversation is that it's more like, the movie Split, right? When they had the multiple personality, or we call it dissociative identity disorder, and how each of the different personalities actually had its own physiology, had its own thing. Like there are records to where people can have one personality that loves peanut butter sandwiches, choke sandwiches, and another one of the personalities in the same body can have a peanut allergy and literally have the reaction to the peanuts, right? Just as if they have an allergy in the same body though. And it speaks truth to what you're saying, scientific support of what you're saying about the changing of the physiology to meet these different character needs and these different identities and these different personalities.
You can't turn it off. Once those genes are turned on, it takes an ice age to turn them off. It takes another extreme circumstance to turn them off. And so every time you're talking to an actor, literally all of those characters are present. They don't let go. All of those characters are present, and you just have to try and remember. It's like someone with Parkinson's, and they're all of these unnecessary twitches are happening, and they're just trying to stay normal down the center line. And that's why a lot of actors become fake, because they can do an imitation of themselves better than being themselves, because they've forgotten who they are.
Wow. See, they just take on a whole persona just to help to maintain the sanity of their day-to-day existence.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's levels to this. You also mentioned that at SAG, there's no mental health. It doesn't cover mental health services.
Cover mental health services at all. And every actor that I know deals with extreme depression, deals with extreme anxiety, deals with extreme rejection, and the need for someone to always say that they're good, the desire to have someone pat them on the back. Like when I'm working, when I do something that's really incredible, I don't mind the applause. I don't mind the director patting me on the back. But if I don't want somebody patting me on the back after every scene, saying that was great, because when they don't, here comes the cortisol levels rising, the
Right.
fear, and you get hooked into that and looking, was that okay? Was that okay? Was that good? And it's like, no, throw that shit away.
Yeah.
It's important. Don't allow it to affect you as an actor out there. Don't look for the appraisal of any of these people. What you need to look for as an actor is reaching the greater truth, because the moment that you reach a greater truth in understanding that character, then you can tell that gene to recess and
Right.
to not necessary. You don't need to be in a defensive place, but we need the mental health. There should be a therapist on site, a number of therapists. You should have 2 or 3 weeks or a month of therapy that should be covered by SAG after you get out of a character, just to help you get back into who you were. But they don't provide that at all. And how many actors commit suicide by using drugs and all other kind of means? And I've got nothing against using drugs. I like watching the tigers or the pumas, the Black Panthers that's down in South America, where they will grab one of those giant millipedes and bite it just enough for it to get neurotoxin.
Yeah.
And they sit there slobbering on themselves for a half hour to an hour. The monkeys do it. Everything does it. So,
Yeah.
to say use food to fuel our system, sometimes we need other things to fuel our psyche, to way, but it should not be about you just trying to get high or just get by. It should be about seeking something, even if it's just seeking peace for a minute. But you have full control of what you put into your body. Do what you want to do, but know what you're doing. Don't
Right.
smoke it. The ashes that fall on the floor could be you, like the great poet and brilliant mind of Moms Mabley.
Right. Yeah. There's a strong ancient tradition for using mind altering substances, whether you're talking about ayahuasca, where you're talking about the use of what they call magical mushrooms, and different types of things that are smoked, peyote, and again, not as a drug for addiction purposes, but something to help to expand consciousness and to actually expand your understanding and embracing the reality. So I hear what you're saying, brother.
For it to be a safe experience, you need a guide.
Yeah.
And um, so I don't know how I got off into that little place, but yeah, that's what happens with Screen Actors Guild and what actors are forced to do in order to cope with these personality conflicts that come about.
Right. And just one last point on my end on that particular topic. I just read an article recently found that said it talked about how PTSD veterans with PTSD actually find more progress in their healing process by using Native American or Indigenous American practices than they do Western medicinal practices. And those are also based on this same concept what you're speaking about. Whether it is talking about smoking tobacco or something else, or just the things that are oriented around that same worldview that allows for that. Um, so, so I
You got
mean,
to read as a grown up, but Screen Actors Guild has a greater responsibility to the artists that entrust themselves to their care and governorship for the most part, because we can't work without their approval.
right.
So they're basically under their government, and they need to provide better for their artistic citizens.
I'd be interested in, I don't know if it's of interest of yours, but and see if we can make some progress in that direction, because it's absolutely necessary. And for a lot of people, actors and entertainers, people who are on the big screen become models, for the roles that other people are going to be playing. And so it's very important that we have not only the best and the brightest, which many of you are the best and the brightest, but we want also the best, the brightest, and the healthiest, who can also communicate health wise and help people to kind of fulfill their own purposes as a as a whole entity. But that's dope. I appreciate that part of the combo, man. let's push it forward a little bit. You know, like we got a lot of ground to cover as always, but so okay, you kind of covered one of the other points, but you know, I saw you on set, you were like a one and done. You do one scene, you one take, and you're good. So I guess we already spoke about how you're able to master your characters because you have a deeper understanding of moving in and out of those particular roles.
Well, it's the director that says it's good, and it's accomplished in telling that portion of the story. They ask you if you want to do a glory one, you know, and you're like, no, I'm okay. As long as you were, if it, I've never had the color red or burnt umber when I'm painting sit up and say, was that enough? You know, can I more? Can I be a little more here? It's so silent and it trusts your hand. And I want that as an actor, you know, because I'm just a color being used by the director. So sometimes you're an emotional whore, you know, when the producers and them don't really appreciate who you are. But to a storyteller, you know, you could be a fine brush. You could be something that you scrape things along with. There's so many different ways of being useful. Like in the Bible, it says that there are vessels made for, you know, for honorable things, like to put water and food, and there's other vessels that's made to put other things, less honorable things in. You got to choose what kind of vessel you're going to be and what household you're going to be in. So it's really important to know the director and know the other people that you're going to work with, because treat their family is how they're going to treat you. How they treat their dog is how they're going to treat you.
Wow. Well, I mean, you know, the thing about those vessels, sometimes it's the same vessel just carrying different things at different times, you know.
Amen.
It could be that.
I mean, I shit at times and full of love at times. You know, we all go back from, you know, being at our best and to being at our worst. And like Ron said, the deeper that sorrow carves into your heart, the more joy you can contain. It's how you deal with that sorrow, how you deal with those angry feelings, how you deal with a lot of that, which leads back to the mental health. But everybody needs to understand what their homeostasis plane, what resonates there, what are their principles, what are their morals, because they know as long as they maintain those, their foundation is good. And therefore you can walk into a character or walk into a situation and get out of it. A friend of mine, I'm sad for, he did work with me on Empire, and he called me a couple of days ago and he said that he had, you know, him and his wife had filed for divorce back in October. He's got two beautiful little girls. And I mean, he's a really, really good brother. She just out of the blue said that she didn't want, you know, to be married anymore. And it's been bothering him, affecting, had to remind him of, you know, that he has to now see her so he can have a balanced state, not as his wife, but see her as his grown-up daughter. Speak to her as he would his grown-up daughter, even if his grown-up daughter didn't respect him. Wow. Speak with that same long suffering and deal with her according to that, and remember his own worth. And I cited this poem to him that my uncle made me memorize when I was 14. If I'll digress, he said, because I was in love with this girl that didn't have any care for me. She just wanted me to get her a Fila jacket. And my uncle kind of hit me to that she was using me at 14. And then he told me this poem. He said, should I wither in despair because a woman be so fair? Is she fair to me? A girl may seem as fine as can be, the most beautiful thing you ever did see. But if she ain't mine, what the fuck I care how fair she be.
Wow. 14.
14, he made me memorize that. I apologize for the crude language, but I'm retelling a historically accurate event, and I wanted to bring it in. And my uncle rarely cursed around me, but he reminded me, like I said, he reminded me, you are a young prince, and someday you will grow up to become king. You must maintain your majestic comportment. You must maintain your majestic composure at all times. Whatever you do it as a king would. Even if you cry, cry as a king would for his nation, for his kingdom. You don't cry about your little personal boo-boos.
Mm.
So he guided me in a great, great way. Appreciative of that. So I had to share that with my friends in hopes that he could remember and get out of his head. Stop thinking about you've lost your wife, because you're going to get your children back if you take care of your own business. You keep doing your thing. You're growing. Your kids are going to come back over to you. And the funny thing, your wife, once she see that you've moved on from her and are still treating her with love, she's going to try and come back, but she don't deserve to be back. Wow. Because she left you the way she left you. And people don't change. And I told him, be happy that she did this now, because can you imagine if she did this 20 years from now? What it would mean. You're in your 30s now. You're handsome, strong, and game. Don't think about what you've lost in her. Think about all the possible love angles that you can attempt now. Learn a few languages and go to those places and meet women. And stop thinking about who she might be with. That doesn't matter. We need this as for mental health from SAG. And if we don't have that, then we need to be there for each other.
Wow. Solid. And see, what the message you just conveyed, man, is not enough younger brothers get this message, right? Your uncle gave it to you. You just shared it with hopefully millions and millions of people, right? And it's powerful because a lot of young brothers don't know their worth. And that's just the reality of it. And that's what I hear in you're a prince and you're going to be a king one day. You mean you have value. So never squander. Don't cash the pearls in front of swine, in other words. Never degrade yourself for the benefit of somebody else is what I'm hearing you say. And too many of our young brothers do not hear that message enough. And if they do hear it, they don't have a model for how to implement that and actually put it into action. And we're trained from little boys that, that boys are made of snakes and snails and puppy dog tails, all the bad stuff, and girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. And we're often deferential, right? We often get abused as men and as boys, and we don't see it as such. I did a quick survey. That's a quick study, right? Just something I was thinking about. I was looking at the differences between when there's a female sexual abuse, like when there's a female teacher that sexually abuses a male student, and how the news covers and labels the headline. And when it's a male teacher and a female student, and it were two totally different things. When it was a female offender, they often said had a relationship with, they made soft language. But when it was a male offender, it was always very harsh, and as harsh as it could possibly be. And those two differences, and people often excuse when boys are being physically or sexually assaulted by women, and they excuse it, and we play it off like it's a good thing. But we know the horror stories about how people go into adulthood with those traumas and how it impacts their inability to have healthy relationships as adults.
And yeah, I've got stories about that. I remember the first grown woman that I slept with. I was 14 years old. Wow. She was 23. I was staying with my uncle in Canoga Park, and she was playing around with me, had a hot dog, playing around with a little hot dog and trying to turn me on at 14. And so led to another. And I'm in here sleeping with this 23, 24-year-old woman whose husband is in jail, or boyfriend, the father of her daughter, is in jail. And I got so frightened. After a month, I got to thinking, oh my God, if she's doing this with me, who else must she be doing with? So I had to go tell my mom. Oh. And I told my mom, and my mom took me to the doctor. I had to get up on the table and be prostrated and doctor was like, you're fine. But that embarrassment of that. And then my uncle, he went and took that lady, befriended her, and ended up taking her to Vegas, where he pimped her for the next 3 years. Wow. The same uncle that led me down the right path. But his darkness. That's the pimp that I played from Hustle and Flow, was my uncle.
Wow, you channeled your uncle.
I can't I can't challenge him. Billy, Billy was everything to me. He did what he had to do. That's
Yeah.
all he, and I can't judge him for the choices that he made, but his way of punishing her was taking those steps. Now, had he a more balanced perspective about what must have happened to her, her to think that that was okay. But when it's a man that does it, now that's what how my uncle dealt with her. If it's a man that does it, a man is the boy, is the state, he holds up the foundation. He's the trust. And that's why they punish men even more so, because men are supposed to hold the standard.
Right.
Your reality as a man carries on into everything you do. We can't trust you if you're not a man of your word, right. If you're not a kind man, if you're not an honest man. And the man reflects, he reflects what's right. And the reflects love. That's what's supposed to take place. That's how I kind of feel it, and so I feel sorry for the women that this happens to when they're in school. Something else is going on in their life. They're deficient in some place. And some little boy has lost his way, the way I had lost my way. I wish that hadn't happened. That changed my entire perspective, and this white woman, so when I ran after white women for a while, had an effect upon me. So when little boys have been molested by men, what do? Because it had some sexual association for the rest of their lives, they associate sexuality to this first act. That affects their mentality. They keep reliving, that experience. So we got to watch our children a lot more. We've got to watch our families a lot more, because everybody's susceptible to the demons that run in and around our natures. We have the angel and the devil with us. As much as I'm hurt by what that woman did, it was a hell of an experience.
Yeah, right. And see, and I love what I think you meant by, when you're talking to your friend about his pending divorce, that you communicate with your ex, as if she's your oldest daughter. And, what I'm understanding in it, as you still best interests at heart, still there to guide and support to the degree that you can, but also understanding this is an adult who's going to live their life, and you can only be there in the way that you're going to be there.
Agapic. You switch from that eros love to that agapic love, the way that God loves, and is hoping, knowing that one day you're going to be in a good place, and I'm going to look at you as if you're on your way there. I'm not going to you for what you might be hiding or fighting inside of yourself, or anger you might have. I'm going to see the God in you and forward to that perfect reflection. So I've gone through a whole lot of different environments growing up, a lot of different influences, and I can't judge any of those people from my history, because they did what was necessary to survive. They did what they felt was necessary to survive. Had they other information, other cultural references, perhaps they would have made different choices. But Black people, in the situation we've been forced into in this country, being dispossessed of our history, our culture, our land, of our name, of our identities, being subjugated for so long, and watching our wives and mothers and sisters be raped, or young men be raped, anyone that stood up. We have a lot of ancestral PTSD that we have to help each other and establish that ourselves, because no one else is going to help, and nobody gives a damn about your emotional boo-boos. I read a couple of days ago that's where someone had commented on the reparations should be, trillions of dollars and things of that. And someone commented that, no, if Black people, or if African Americans are owed reparations, it's from Africa, because they were sold by Africa, and they should be happy that they're here, because if they were in Africa, they would still be living in dirt and doing all. They have opportunity here. We should be happy that we were raped and beaten and subjugated and forced to do labor for 400 years, because we're in a place that we don't have to walk on the dirt. I would rather walk in the dirt and still have my name.
How about that? And everything that comes along with it. Yeah, no doubt about it, brother. Man, I appreciate this avenue we just rolled down, brother. And I'm sure the people that are watching also, able to gain from that. I mean, it's this level of, I think my brother, Tony Browder, I shared with you his comment, and, he says that he wishes that there were more conversations about two very serious and enlightened brothers, having conversations such as this publicly, so that other people can know it's okay. It's okay for men to talk, in this context is Mayne to Mayne, but what I mean? It's very important to show that brothers can build and brothers can discuss very heavy things. And we're okay, in fact, we're better for it, so I mean, I really tip my hat to you, man, and really appreciate, the transparency that you're offering. We still got some stuff to dive into. I mean, we're just, what would you say, this the appetizer. The last conversation was the appetizer, and I think that the waiters, they just came and cleared the first course, and now they're about to bring in this main course for us, because what we're also here to talk about is, that aspect of you that is the scientist. Right. And I mean, again, one of my sole purposes, and I gave you my word, brother, is that I'm rolling with you. And one of my sole purposes is to help to reintroduce you to the world so that people can get a better understanding of this part of you, because to me, it's so valuable. Right. And I understand what you're putting on the table, and I'm here for it, man. So, I mean, if we go ahead and shift gears a little bit, one of the things that people talked about was the intervals with the elements. And I remember when I was looking at that spiral that you had drawn of the periodic table, and you briefly told me about how, the theory is that, or the understanding is that one element evolves and it grows and turns into the next element. So can you talk about that a little bit? And you also said that hydrogen is actually not the first one, like based on the pattern, it has to be, I think you said 4 before it.
Oh, there's Walter Russell in 1926 did a book called The Universal One.
Okay.
He wrote another treatise in 1954 to the Universal One. In the Universal One, yes, New Concept of the Universe, by Walter Russell. In that book and in the Universal One, he attributed each element to its tonal position, and based upon how its orbit. If the orbit was completely spherical, he knew that this was a solid tone. But one of the things that he recognized is every element has a noble gas that precedes before it and after it. And there are 3 steps to folding an element. And an element is just a pressure condition. It's just a periodic pressure condition. And we say periodic because it repeats itself. Something predictable. When you get this kind of pressure condition, this is the element that will show, or this is the crystallization that will occur. If you get this pressure condition, the crystallization is even tighter. You get this pressure condition, the crystallization is tighter. And we call each of those crystallizations a different element, but it's substance under different motion and pressure conditions, predictable motion and pressure conditions. So hydrogen, having the same exact tone as carbon and silicon and cobalt and cobalt. Okay, hold on. Rhodium, sorry. Hydrogen having those same tonal conditions. If carbon has 3 elements that precede before it, lithium, beryllium, boron, And then in the next octave, silicon has three elements that proceed before it: the sodium, the magnesium, the aluminum, and even cobalt has three solid circular things that happen before it: potassium, calcium, scandium.
Hmm.
And if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A should be equal to C. So how is it that hydrogen doesn't have three elements that proceed before it, and also three elements that proceed after it before you get to helium?
Right.
It's an entire octave within itself. It's an entire range of pressure conditions. But our senses, because of our temporal dimension, because of how our minds and heartbeat, how it is set to the universal constant, we can only perceive motion when four bubbles come together. We cannot perceive higher conditions or higher states of matter or more dense states of matter, because its temporal dimension is different from us. So the very first thing we can see is hydrogen. But there's 21 other elements that occur before it. And all of those elements are not things that's been here forever. Those are conditions, conditional facts, because once you change the condition, it changes the fact. Once you change the condition of carbon, once you take carbon out of that equalized pressure condition between helium and neon, and you move it just a little bit to a discharging state, it unwinds into nitrogen.
Hmm.
And that nitrogen, it unwinds into oxygen as the centripetal force takes over, where the centripetal force was, which is electric, was keeping it tightly bound. As it unwinds, we see it as a different element, but it's the same exact element, same exact noble gas, same exact set of curves that we just perceive as something different because of our ignorance.
And so just and thank you for that, elucidating it in that way. It makes it very plain, and I'm sure, it's just because I've studied chemistry at some level that I'm able to follow and keep up to a degree. But I'm hearing you say the different pressure conditions. So it's similar to how, and I know we're not changing from carbon, it's still carbon, but how pressure creates, pressure on carbon creates diamonds, and it's a different configuration of the same thing. And it's based on the pressure condition.
That's a different crystallization based on the change in pressure and motion conditions. And it never gets more complicated than that. But someone a long time ago spread the lie that there was all these different elements and that things broke down at the quantum scale and behaved completely different than they do at this scale that we're seeing. And these were just, might as well have been bedtime stories.
And part of that is like gatekeeping, if you will.
What do you need, son?
Hey. And so like part of it is like gatekeeping, right? So, they make things overcomplicated to keep the masses confused and dependent. I found that to be the case in many arenas that I've been in, where people are overcomplicated. I'm like, wait a minute, ain't that just? And they look at me like, shh, don't say that, because then people will be enlightened and they'll be less dependent upon those who claim to have this supreme and superior understanding.
Like having to go through the priest, to the father, to the, to the Jesuit priest, to talk to, the Pope, that will hopefully talk to Jesus and hopefully talk to God on your behalf, when all you have to look inside and speak to the Creator within.
That's what, if I'm not mistaken, in the Council of Nicaea, if you look at the Nicene Creed, they speak specifically of a person named Arius, who they were actually saying, don't follow that person's doctrine. And they said, matter of fact, take dude out if you can. That's not in the creed itself, but that was a part of the whole council, was to go against what this African, it was North African, was saying, which was, you don't need an intercessor. You don't need somebody coming in on your behalf. God is within you, just like the ancient African cultures and civilizations have always taught, as far as recorded history is concerned.
Yep. That's what we need to we need to get back to our roots. We need to get back to the simplicity of everything. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS is If it's complicated, it's a lie.
Mm.
Can't understand it, it's a lie. Because we can understand all things.
Wow.
If it's told in a truthful manner, we can tell and sense it. If it's complicated and you need faith in order to get through, and you need belief to get through, then that's a lie. Because you don't need faith to breathe in and out. And that's the existence that comes from the creator. That's what lets us know, okay, I've got the right to be here. And if I got the right to be here, I've got the right to be me. But also with being me, I have a responsibility to everything else that's around me to fit with all things and to improve all things around me.
Wow. And then that changes even the definition of what me is. You know, I am all these things around me. You know, I interact with, I'm interdependent, and I'm interrelated to all of these things around me. And that's, again, the ancient perspective of yourself. You're more than just this individual box in this character. And that takes me back to what you were saying last time about the handwriting. You know, you said you switch up forward, backwards, both hands, and now you have 4 different perspectives of the thing that you're approaching. And that's the other part, is that ourselves are so expansive, but we're conditioned to limit to just one thing, one type of manifestation. But as you're demonstrating, the more you expand upon your capabilities, I often say our bodies are 24/7, 365 laboratories. So the more you utilize this body to expand your experience and your consciousness, the broader your understanding of who and what you are becomes. And therefore the things that you're capable of. And then you begin to live more and more as what we would call our God selves, or our divine aspects. And the sooner that we can erase that line, that illusionary line that divides us from our divinity, I think the better off we're going to be as people.
I think we would be better off blind.
Mm.
Can you imagine? We wouldn't recognize race if we were blind.
Wow.
We wouldn't recognize beauty. You know, all of these, you know, the genetic coincidence of symmetry. We wouldn't recognize any of that if we were blind. And we would actually care about the tone and what's being said. And in truth, we are blind. We only see less than 0.5% of the total spectrum.
Right.
Total light spectrum. And with that 0.5%, less than 0.5%, we judge everything.
Everything.
And we are cosmically blind.
Right.
So and intellect retarded on a conscious and cosmic level. We defecate and pour defecation into clean water. Don't think that is fish. There's no other creature that goes over its water source and defecates inside it.
Right. And when fish do it, their feces is designed to do that. You know, it's designed not to contaminate it or pollute it, because it was built based on it. Wow. And so that's very profound, because of course, you know, understand we see a very small spectrum, but the idea that we are literally unaware of the majority of things that are around us because we can't perceive them with our own, well, with the faculties that we've been conditioned to strengthen.
World dimension. We don't move fast enough to recognize those great deities that are right around us and moving around us, but they're just moving at a different temporal dimension. They don't necessarily they're not crystallized at 93 million miles away from the sun, where carbon and oxygen and all of the elements that make us up, at this point, it crystallizes. You push us a little closer, we melt. This convenient compound of pressure and motion conditions that we call ourselves, you know, this disappears when we move a little further away from the sun. And that's one of the things that we didn't talk about before. But hey, Beethoven, get over here. The pocket watch. Yes, I'm in the middle of a meeting. So gone back in the house.
We're about to get on that piano, huh?
Oh, wait, I'll get you the pocket watch. Go inside and I'll get you, I'll take care of that. The clock. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna have for a bit.
Okay.
So say that again. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so no, you were saying that, and it's very profound. A little bit closer, we melt, and we'll say it's because it heated up and we couldn't withstand that heat. But it's a transformation of the pressure condition, which then transforms the elements that make up all of our existence. A little bit further out, different pressure condition.
To fit together. Wait a minute. Too hot to fit together this close. We're gonna have to separate a little bit more. I know you do, but go in the house, son.
Wow, that's pretty profound. That's pretty profound. I'm gonna say it that way. Huh. So
Okay, let me see if we're gonna do.
okay.
I'm gonna have to call and get some reinforcements because I'm not in the mood to listen to his daddy right now.
Yeah.
I am not in the mood to be mean to him. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, will you have Mimi come and get Hero? I'm in the middle of a Zoom.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a pretty profound experience, y'all. You know, what my brother takes care of home. I hope that you all are tracking and following what we're talking about here. This is just brilliance, and it's the simplicity of it. And it's like when you can conceive of high level truths in a basic form, right? When you can conceive of this level of understanding and you can boil it down to the basics like this. Like I'm saying, I just had a mind opening experience when you said move closer and we melt. And when you said that within the context of the pressure condition, you know, teaching, it's like, duh, it makes absolute sense. And it's at this specific, let's say 93 million miles out, that we are able to exist in this way. It doesn't mean that we don't exist in any other pressure condition. We just exist differently. And that's always tripped me out when we say that there's no life on Mars. I said, no, you're looking for life on Mars as you've defined it on Earth. It can't exist there like it exists here.
There's no death on Mars. There's no death on any planet. Everything is alive and just in a different state of existence based on the motion and pressure conditions. But there is no death. Death is the comparable to sleeping, where life is being awake. It's once you recognize those things, you know, and you see the eternal breathing in and breathing out of you and all things, each element breathing in and a positive thing. Like they say, there's a thing called negative charge. Electrons are this negative charge and protons are this positive charge. You crack heads, there's only everything has a dual as a corpuscle. Everything has both a positive and negative discharge. You cannot be negatively charged.
Wow. And so,
itself. Right. It's discharge. It's electricity when it's lost its ability to seek that higher pressure condition, and centrifugal force overtakes it. Magnetism springs it out away from it. But the electricity is always trying to seek that higher pressure condition, and the magnetism is always seeking the lower pressure condition. And it's just the motion of that fluid substance, that ether, spinning to the right or to the left. That's all it is. And each time interacting with each spin, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And that reaction is eternal. We are the reaction of some greater action from a long time ago, but we are still as present today as that initial action. Light doesn't travel. Light reproduces itself. With each octave, with each wave, it has a full life cycle of falling in, of birth, growing up, maturing, mating, and then reproducing into the next octave. Wow. Every wave of life is light itself is an entire family. Everything, and we have to respect. Water is the same way. You cannot push water through these pipes, these unnatural pipes, and put them in these conditions because water is alive. Wow.
You remind me of the great philosopher Nas, also known as Nasir Jones. He says he never sleeps because sleep is the cousin of death. I'm sure that came from somewhere else, but that's where I learned it, was from Nas.
But that's like not breathing out. I never breathe out because breathing out is curse of death. Man, I breathe all day long, and I'm afraid of it. My favorite thing now is to go to sleep at night. But we should get into the science because I run in about a half hour. So let's do what we got to.
And I was just gonna say one quick thing, Brother Yasir, the yoga master I told you about, he sent a message last time, was set Qued, said to be awake while asleep. So when you spoke about it last time, he was just showing that the ancient Kemetic people.
What's it called?
It's well, the way that it's written is RSWT is the first word, set, and then Qued, QWED is how he wrote it. And it says to be awake while asleep. It was their definition of lucid sleeping, or lucid dreaming. And that's how, from my understanding through my initiations, is that that's how we were able to map out what happens when you transition from quote unquote life into death, is by maintaining your consciousness from the awake state into your sleep state. And if you can master that, hence sleep is the cousin of death. If you can master keeping conscious between awake and sleep, then you can master keeping conscious between alive and dead. And that way you know what's happening on the other side.
Control where you're going because you've anticipated and you're not panicked by this new circumstances or this thing that you haven't seen for a long time, hopefully. Don't panic. Don't panic. Go along for the ride. Even if you're getting on to the bottom of the ocean, go along for the ride. Take that deep breath if you know that you can't come up anyway. What's the sense of let it out?
Right.
And reform. Don't be afraid. Reform. And that's the thing. That's what's necessary for men to be men. That's why when Jordan Peterson said that men should be dangerous.
Yes.
That what good is their virtue of being gentlemen if they have potential for harm. Right. But it's having the potential for harm that you choose not to, and therefore it becomes a virtue. But that harming side, which is the masculine side, which is the aggressive side, which is that 98.7% side of us that from, our closest relatives, these simians, that aggression is what nature has said is necessary. So there are times when a man has to fight, and there's a time when a man has to be at peace. But you could never stop to call him less of a man because he chose to express that masculine, right, that masculine necessity. Right. I'm a feminine man. There's nothing that disgusts me than men walking around here being effeminate, because they forget how hard it was for them to get to life. They've forgotten that they got here for a purpose.
Social pressures, man, making us apologize for being men. That's another conversation for another day, brother. Let's
I don't apologize for being a man.
No, nobody should.
For the idea of womanizing at any point that I did in my youth. That's what I was supposed to do. That was 98.7% of me programmed to do, was to amass as many females as possible, like my closest relatives.
Another conversation for another day, my man.
But settled down. I've done that. So now I'm settled down, man. But when I was producing 1,500 sperm per heartbeat as a 20-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, you darn right, I went and tried to tackle the biggest buck so that I can all the females.
People don't understand the amount of energy that is. There's a decrease in sperm count right now. From one generation to the next, there's a drastic decrease. I'm trying to we call it the countdown.
It's at 2.6% since 1970. That means that if it was 250 to 500 million sperm that was sent into a vagina in a healthy ejaculation in 1970, in 2021, after they did all of the research, it's shown that it's been a 2.6% drop every year.
Right.
Since 70. So you do the math on that. So that's like 10 to 15, maybe 20 million sperm.
And people don't understand the implications of that, but again, let's jump off into the science, but we could come back and have that conversation for sure, because it's necessary, because the implications that it has on society as a whole are being minimized right now, if not flat out just ignored.
It's an extinction event.
And it's rapidly occurring.
45, it's estimated there'll be no males on the planet of any species able to produce sperm as a result of the BPAs and BPHs and or bisphenols, and as a result of the phthalates from the plastic that's in the water.
Wow.
And it's imitating of estrogen in living organisms, even plants are affected.
And that's found inside the lining of canned goods and bottled waters, and it's in the environment. It's ubiquitous at this point.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. Brother,
kill us. The oil companies are killing the entire world, and they themselves will die. It'll all be over. So if we don't do something about it, we've got to wake up. So that's why the introduction of new fundamentals are necessary now. So we can find
platonic solids.
Yes. So one of the things that I talked about in our talk before was that there are no straight lines in the universe. But if you could play the video for the platonic solids, I wanted to know where they came up with the platonic solids. And there's a number of different stories, but the story I heard more than anything in all of the research I did came back to the flower of life, the oldest symbol kind. So if you could play that video, we could get into that aspect of it.
Yeah, platonic solids video coming up. I'm gonna share my screen and make sure I share the audio, and then we'll jump right into that. Yeah, this is fascinating, and the point that it's all related, is the walk away. If people don't walk away with anything else, just understand that, there's an interrelatedness and an interconnectedness through all things. And it's that saying that we used to have in ancient times: as above, so below. Okay, here we go. Sharing the screen now. Here's a platonic solid video. I'm playing it now, brother. Can you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
So what's happening here? We're not going to be able to hear you.
Wondering, is it possible to turn down the volume on that, play it again, so walk it through?
I was trying to mute it and I couldn't get to it. The space bar, the toolbar was in the way. Let me run it back. I have it muted now.
Okay, good.
Okay, here we go.
So now the oldest images that we have from antiquity and found on every continent is this image where 64 circles are overlapped. And it's called the flower of life. And on every continent it was found, in whatever language, it was always called the flower of life. Well, 6,000 years ago, or however long ago, someone had the clever idea of saying, you know what, why don't I draw straight lines where the circles overlap? And play it from that point.
Yeah. So real quick, let me ask you. So this right here, what we're looking at is the flower of life, right?
This is the original flower that's carved into so many different places throughout the world. It's always been respected. And there's 64 separate circles.
And that's what the circles that we just saw being generated are literally how this image is created, by simply drawing 64 circles in this pattern.
Yep.
And I hope y'all are seeing how this is manifesting and how these symbols, and this is like a sand dollar almost.
Now, each one of these circles you have to see as a magnetic field. That's how magnetism behaves. Everything expands. But what they did 6,000 years ago, keep it playing, allow it to keep playing, is they began to average the space where the circles overlap. So that tetrahedron that we see, because we know that there are no straight lines, because all energy has an equal and opposite. Let's pause it for a second, just so I can repeat that. Um, all energy is expressed in motion, all motion expressed in waves, and all waves are curved. Therefore, it is impossible to create a straight line, because every action has the equal and opposite reaction, and the greater that reaction, the greater the resistance, and the greater that curvature. This curvature is the equanimity of all the interactions within a particular system. It all balances out into these perfect spheres, which are magnetic fields around each other, which is a discharging aspect. And where these magnetic fields interact, this is where electricity begins. Where they overlap, they're forced to create spin. But 6,000 years ago, they said they're going to average the spin, and these toroidals happening, and they generated straight lines and approximated where the energy goes, so you can keep playing it. And now you can clearly see that even the cube, where we get Pythagorean theorem from, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, is an average. It's an approximation. But most of our math is our algebra, our calculus, all of those things are generated through this circumstance, which also led into why 1 times 1 could not possibly equal 1, because what if you made each side of those lengths 1? Then you couldn't get the proper hypotenuse. So all of these problems arose from them creating straight lines where there were no straight lines. And this has been called, the greatest discovery, basically, in geometry and for mathematics. But
and that's the Platonic solids you're speaking about.
The Platonic solids are averages. Euclid went to Egypt and pulled these things and wrote them down, and everyone took credit for them, but they took credit for some falsehoods. So they've watched it go through, and it'll go through the dodecahedron. So what I decided to do, what I was instructed to do, was to take the same flower. So can we go to my app?
Yep.
I think they've seen this already anyway, so they understand. So if we'll go to my app.
And that's the one where we can manipulate the
Yep. That's the web application. It's in my book, tclc.com. Going to page 134 on the right side of it, it'll say web application.
Okay, but it's the one that the second one, this one here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me move it.
This right here. This is what they'll find. Tap on it and we can start playing with it.
Okay, let's get this. So I'm
It's
gonna rotate it.
Yep, there we go. And what he has there, there's an icon going from left to right, is what happens when 4 bubbles meet. I took actually the actual curved triangular pieces, and I put 4 of them together based on universal ratios. And this is what it generated. We bring that closer so everybody can and look at it from not just the top, but from maybe a 60-degree perspective, a little more and closer, just so they can see it. What you're looking at right here, if you'll rotate it, this is the point where bubbles meet. This is the negative space that they cannot compress. This is what we would call dark matter. This is the proton, the geometry of hydrogen itself. And we'll see that it has 8 poles. It has 4 contractive poles, and that's where it concaves in, and it has electricity seeking a higher pressure condition will cause a cavity, and magnetism, unable to maintain its electrical potential, ends up spinning off of the vortices.
So real quick, brother, when you say 4 bubbles, you're literally saying that there's a sphere here in this space, and this is just the negative space when 4 spheres are literally coming together. This is the space that's left in between them.
Yes.
Brilliant. Because I know people say bubbles. 4 bubbles, what are you talking about? Uh-oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And that's what people.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just real quick. This people are trying to understand when you say bubbles, you're literally talking about four spheres. And like you said, you can see this concave. It's like you could put a sphere here, you could put a sphere here, one on the other side, and then one beneath. And this is the absolute, this is the actual shape that you're going to get. And one thing really quickly, and then I'll shut up. But one thing when I was looking at this earlier, I literally see the force. I see three circles on the ground here. You got this circle here. I don't know if you can see my pointer. Circle here, a circle here, and a circle here. These are three of the bubbles, three of the spheres right there. And you put another one underneath it, and you got your four.
And that's what the flower of life was trying to leave and tell us, 10,000 years ago, by whomever advanced civilization told us that these would be the fundamentals, because everything expands as a sphere and contracts in geometric form. These contractions are the result of expanding waves that hit the edge of the universe and come back. And it's periodic and regular enough to where we have this structure that we call hydrogen, the proton.
And when you say periodic, that's the periodic part, right? It's just in intervals, predictable intervals.
Yes.
Nice. Should I go to the next one?
Yeah, go to the next one. The one next to it was, and I called this one a tetryon. And the next one, and I patented these things because I wanted to make sure that it was understood where they came from. Because a lot of times our work is not attributed to us.
Right,
but
like George Washington Carver, he didn't want the patents for his stuff.
Yep. So like that last one that we saw, it had 4 equal contractive poles with 4 repulsive poles, 4 electric poles, and contractive electric poles, centripetal electric poles, and 4 magnetic centrifugal. Now, this is what happens when 8 bubbles meet. This is the negative space where 8 bubbles have met. But you'll notice it has 8 contractive poles. If you spin that around, you see 1, 2, 3, 4. And around it, you'll see the same. You can go slightly underneath it. Yeah, you'll see the other 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, you do that. But yeah, just spinning it around it. Just continue turning it to the left. Yep, you'll see that there's 4 poles there, 4 contractive poles. So there's 8 contractive poles, electric poles, but only 6 magnetic poles. Only 6 points where it's discharging. Now, wouldn't that sound like the strong nuclear force in comparison to the weak nuclear force of where it's an equal and it's 4 equal contractive poles and 4 equal repulsive poles? Well,
when you talk about the 6, you're talking about these 6 points here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep, each vortice is 6. A magnetic pole. It's a discharging pole. It has a greater electrical potential, a greater electrical and attractive potential than a repulsive potential. Well, let's see what happens when 6 bubbles meet. If you go to the very next one, right? Yep, right there. Wow, look at what's happened. This thing has now this hunting, which is in the center, has attracted these 2 lesser attractive components. This looks just like a photon, and you could see those big swipes where 6 bubbles or 6 fast-moving bubbles are occurring. 1, 2, 3, and keep turning it, and you'll get all 6 of them. Each of those huge, and you'll see it's a combination, and this is a step-up transformer. You're stepping up from 3 sides, 1, 2, 3 from these, from the tetryons that's on the ends of it. You're stepping up from 1, 2, 3 up to a 1, 2, 3, 4 on electrical potential with the Huntian, and then it steps back down to a 1, 2, 3. Well, that's everything that we see with our mechanical and our electrical transformers, a step up and step down transformation. But the stable structure. So let's see what happens when 12 bubbles.
Okay, so real quick, you said with our transformers, you're literally talking about the electrical transformers that are on the power lines, stepping up and stepping down energy.
Yes, a step up and step down transformation. Everything behaves that way. So here's I say is here is the strong and weak nuclear forces. And now this is what happens when 12 bubbles meet. And what this ties into is what we were saying under different motion and pressure conditions. you get a different crystallization. Here's another stable structure, but it still has 4 electrical potentials that hasn't been accounted for in the Huntian. Still has 4 unaccounted for. The points if you go to the center, point your pointer to the center, rotate it to the right a bit. If you rotate it to the right and zoom in a little bit, yep, and zoom in and take that pointer right to that center point, to the center, yep, there. That's the unaccounted electrical potential, and it has 4 of them. So this thing still is attracting things, but it's a stable structure. And then, so you go to the very last one. So you can see, and I didn't have to break any rules to make that.
Right.
And
so you're constructing these. You're constructing these on solid mathematical principles.
Universal ratios.
Wow.
So now you look at, this Huntian, all of its electrical potential has been accounted for. So you would not be able to distinguish this from the background, from the rest of the universal background, because it gives off no electrical potential.
Wow.
And so this is the Bose-Einstein condensate, when something becomes indistinguishable from the fabric of the universe. This is that.
So Terrence, somebody who's a mathematician, a physicist, electrical engineer, chemical engineer, seeing this, their mind should be getting blown right now, right?
Yeah, or they should get turned on. And I look forward. I'm at the point now where I'm ready to war. So I challenge any chemist, any physicist, any astrophysicist, any cosmologist, any biologist, anyone within the fields of science to come and challenge me. And these are proofs. This isn't theories anymore. Theories are written out and need to be proven. These are geometric proofs. These are
this is proof of concept right here.
And what you're looking at is electricity. These are the natural folds of electricity. Now, they have other supplemental folds that ends up occurring, but this is the highest point of contraction where everything is held in and there's balance. Now, I want to show the supersymmetry of these with that other video that I sent you of the structure I've actually made by hand. This is what I've sculpted.
Okay, here we go. So it's the with the clear plastic pieces.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Let me see. Yeah, yeah. For those who are watch and rewatch, and pull in some of your chemist friends, some of your biologist friends, physicists, and we want you all to approach in good faith. Don't come with no trickery and no slick stuff. Come in good with the purpose.
Uncover everything that they're doing. Everything that they're doing. You could come with all the games you got.
But we don't want it. Just come in good faith. I know. See, that's what I was saying in our last conversation. You want
their degree.
I got you.
I want people to put up their degree. If you're going to challenge me, and I will put my patent up. And if you come and show me a better model of the universal constant of come yours. But if you cannot, your designated doctor comes to me in whatever field you have. And I put that up one there. Anybody that has the ability to challenge me, you have no right to challenge what I have to say. And you are going to do it,
Brother Terrence,
in good faith.
So I think that the computer is glitching right now for a reason, because literally it was just glitching. And so it's that warrior in the garden type of thing I talked about last time, right? It's that, we would rather be warriors in the garden than gardeners in the war. Uh-oh. Yeah, see, we lost him. He something happened with the connection on that end, but I'm sure he'll be right back in. But that's what I was saying, though. It's like the warrior energy and the warrior spirit. It's like, that's what I'm saying. Come in good faith. When you see that what this brother is putting forward, for all my scientists out here that are watching, and people who have friends that are scientists, that are chemists, that are physicists, that are engineers, share this video with them. Share the concepts that Brother Terrence is putting forward, and come in good faith. Come not to battle. Come, don't come to try to trick and to deceive and all that type of stuff. Leave all of that out. Do it for the sake of science. Do it for the sake of us being able to, you know, explore this truth for what it is, right? Because that's what's necessary. We need to continue to build forward. We need to continue to, you know, to correct things that have been incorrect for so long. And it can only benefit everybody. The only thing that's going to be injured potentially is the ego that tries to stand in the face of truth and maintain falsehood and deception. And so, Brother Terrence, what I was saying while we were waiting on you to come back in, and that's, you see the energy, you were ready to fight and it glitched, just totally glitched out. We couldn't hardly even hear you anymore. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, let's invite people in good faith, right? You're still muted, brother. Let's invite people in good faith. We don't want to fight. It's not necessary, but it's possible. And you're ready for war if that's what you want.
Well, but an argument isn't necessarily violence. An argument, people expressing their passionate views towards truth. I like that. I appreciate that.
It's
You
fine.
need to throw insults in order to make your point, you know, but you still, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to facts. And see, with these, I didn't have to do any renormalization. I didn't have to erase or discontinue or try and subtract out inconvenient values that showed up. I didn't have to trim any parts of this out to put these together like they have done with their math.
Right.
And
so the approach that I'm suggesting is kind of what I do with I got some students going to present their dissertation, and I feel unnecessarily call it the dissertation defense. And what that does is it sets them up to approach it defensively. And so what I do is I reframe it and I say, nope, you're not coming to defend anything. You're coming to present it. And they sit back and say, dang, I never thought about it like that. I said, nope, you're coming to present the work that you have done. You're not defending anything. You're presenting it. And that's going to keep you open and it's going to keep your committee open. So that way it facilitates the conversation and the communication, and it allows us to get to that moment of truth quicker with less bruises, right? But again, it's like you say, Jordan Peterson said it, you know, we've got to stay dangerous. So if a person don't know, and that's the real definition of meek also, is somebody who has the swords, who's capable of carnage, fully capable of it, but they keep their sword sheathed.
yeah,
I'm not going to even draw down on you. Matter of fact, I'm coming in such a way that you won't even provoke that. So and that's just all I'm trying to do, because what I am fully invested in is us moving this to where we are on the largest stage possible, presenting these truths to where the highest levels of academia are saying, wow, Brother Terrence, Dashon, Howard, we apologize, you know, for all of those times that we have basically shitted on you and your name. We apologize for not being receptive the first time you came around. But now we hear you clearly, brother. Let's make this work. That's the day I'm looking forward to, and I want that to come sooner than later.
so too. But in interim, I'm looking forward to, because they have bashed my name so much, it is necessary to defend it. So now I'm saying there's consequences. So if you're going to come up against my name and come up against these things, then let's do it on a public forum. Yes. And you debate your position and I'll debate my position, and we'll let the public decide. And yes, if you like it that way, we can go and have a private conversation, because I don't want to destroy anybody's faith or humiliate someone in front of others. But right, if you'd like to have a private conversation, we can do it private. But if you're going to make public statements, then we're going to have this on a public forum. But I come to peace, even though the things that I bring, you know, may rattle the establishment, you know, and the established standards, but that's how we grow. We don't stay in soil as seeds, you know, we sprout up and begin to grow, and we challenge the upper atmosphere, and we challenge the sun and how long we can stand in it, and we challenge the earth and sticking our roots deeper and pulling its sources. We have to keep growing, and growing, you know, it takes some breaking. So I don't mind. I don't mind presenting and talking to anyone that has something to talk about.
Right. And as your brother in arms, brother, I'm just saying, y'all come in good faith. We'll get further quicker that way. But if
that's at Morgan, we came in really good faith.
You want to fight, as you all see my brother, Yeah, and
We can debate. We
we
can debate
let's
like
let's
about
let's
anything.
let's show the
Yes.
video.
Now, these are the sculptures that I created.
Yes,
That,
and so this brother is sitting and literally putting these shapes together by hand. Can you see the screen?
well, you're about, no, that's the wrong one. You're actually about to do the magnetic field. I don't want to show the magnetic field just yet. I
Okay.
want you to do the video where it's all of the
Oh,
crystalline
it
on the,
starts from the top.
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
I got you.
That,
I got you. Yep.
and
Here.
that's to demonstrate the supersymmetry of what I just showed them in the web application. This is the supersymmetry of them all working together. You might have to start it again.
Okay.
And weird that
Okay.
it's so.
It's I got to figure out how to zoom this in, but I got you. Here it is. Okay, yeah, it won't allow me to zoom it in. There it is. Can you see it?
Yeah, can you start it over?
Yep.
Now, all of these are different motion and pressure conditions. We have Abrians, we have Adrians, where five of them have come together. Five of these Aubrian pieces have come together. This is 10 of them coming together, and they predict every potential wave that can ever occur. And
so
these are multiple different wave conjugations or pressure conditions, but you see how they all fit together. Here we are back to the Dashon, where 6 bubbles meet, blending in with what happens when 12 bubbles meet. Here's 5 of the Dashons come together. Here again, which are the light units. All of these things are different motion and pressure conditions, but it shows you when 2 or more of them bond or come together, it creates a natural waveform.
wow.
These are the true, this is the structure of electricity. This is the dark matter that they keep looking for. It's already been found. It's already been patented. And I look forward to us now developing new postulates and new axioms based upon these real true curved spaces.
And so you've also talked about being able to predict the entire Milky Way, and that was in a simulator, right? And so you were able to use these same patterns and explain for us in basic terms what you meant when you said you were able to map the Milky Way. Like, talk to us like you talking to a 6th grader.
Well, what we did is, instead of, they always say gravity was the cause of, planets and anything coming together. And I disagree with that. Nature disagrees with that, because it is electricity that's 137 times more attractive than the effects of proposed gravity. And as a result of that, and that's an interesting number, because if you think 1 over 137, that's the fine structure constant that's responsible for everything in there. But it should tell you about the relationship of electricity. But as far as we use linchpins to predict we can use the wave conjugations, but we use linchpins by putting them in the apex of our solar system. And along the galactic plane, you'll see the leg of the linchpin able to predict every single star on the galactic, the celestial, and the elliptic plane. Each one of, like, if you picture an atom, the average picture of an atom, you'll see a circle, and you'll see something this way, another circle going this way, and another one going this way. Right. That's the elliptic, the galactic, and the celestial plane.
And so you're saying that at certain points on the linchpin, there are going to be stars that are going to be on these points?
At every single carbon line, which is the center line of struts of the linchpin, you will see the other stars that accompany them. And the noble gases that's holding those together are on the edges of that pentagonal strut. So you're now able to predict all distribution of matter, all distribution of motion. And then you use the wave conjugations to fine tune, because every occurrence of matter happens as a result of a harmonic, sympathetic, vibratory relationship.
And that makes sense, because you're saying that the linchpin design is based upon the geometry of a proton.
Of the tetrine, yes.
And that means that everything that is a thing should have this same basic pattern. I think you talked about it being like fractal.
Yeah, the grand unified field equation is the fractal.
And you know,
What
I can't wait. I can't,
everything, and that's that tetrahedron. That first thing I showed you when you put four of those things together.
right. And
Yes.
so, and I can't wait, because I remember when our early conversations, we talked about this, and I said, if what you're saying is the truth, and I believe that it is, then I should be able to use these same shapes in the world of psychology as well. I should be able to do some predictive things with these shapes. I have to figure it out. And I think I have figured out a design to actually utilize these same shapes to get predictive with human behavior and human disposition as well. And I think, a matter of fact, when you were in the DR and you were showing me the new shapes, and I remember you had put some together and you said that you had done them the inverse of what you had intended to do. And that's when I thought about, I wonder what that has to do with the hemispheres and which hemisphere might be active at that time. And so I'm looking forward to being able to step that level of the research or that application of.
It's like you get to, now we know that a basic linchpin, hold on 1 second, forgive me.
Okay, yeah.
Forgive me. A basic linchpin is made up of a magnetic, because it's spinning outward, and an electric bond. This is, again, the point where the four bubbles actually meet. Now, this we call the linchpin, but it's still the tetrahedron from the center out. Well, four of them will come together and they'll make this very predictable structure. Then these will now, and this is a magnetic bond because it has a dodecahedron in the center, or an expansive center, whereas electricity collapses this. And then these will come together and create these natural bonds. And then four of them will come together. And again, they've recreated this tetrahedral form.
Wow.
And these will keep bonding with greater ones. But if you were to do an electric bond, instead of where four linchpins meet, you ended up with where five linchpins meet, and you can see that the dodecahedron has been collapsed. And it's still a tetrahedral form, but the dodecahedron is collapsed. Well, these now begin to bond like so. Very predictable structures, or they'll bond like so with nothing overlapping. All predictable structures. And these things become larger structures. This is what the universe is based upon. So by putting a certain number of linchpins together to do the Milky Way, we just did two linchpins opposed to each other and added in the particles and create and allowed the spin to occur. And then we ended up with the entire Milky Way galaxy. That's in the very beginning of the book. Go to tcotlc.com. The very first page, you'll see, before you tap on the green clover, you'll see a video where we use the same simulators that they use in all of the major science schools. And we rebuilt the planet Saturn without gravity. And we did the same by just putting four linchpins in rotation with each other, allowing those vortices from the 12 different opposing pentagonal spaces. Each one of these, inside of each one of these, oops, sorry guys. I went and moved the main thing that was holding this whole thing up. Life happens.
Yeah, dude.
What you're looking at is each one of these has a vortice that's spinning off of it. You have to picture multiple vortices spinning off of each one of these tornadoes. And that's how things bond. It's this relationship. And this is how matter is distributed along these lines. This is what everything comes down to in the universe. It's as simple as that.
Now, wait a minute. So now what you just did, that's how you came up with the concept of the linchpin being a drone and able to fly the way that it does, the vortices?
Yes, because of those 12 vortices that occur within it. Let me help you.
Yeah, man. And so I hope that y'all are grasping.
This right here is going to generate those 12 of vortices. It's the same as this, but each pentagonal area has its own approaches at this natural space, this natural universal bend where all these forces has to come and meet. Now you're able to mitigate or to cancel out the galactic plane. You can the galactic spin. You can decouple from that. You can decouple from the ecliptic spin, and decouple from the celestial spin. And you have now an ability to balance through everything.
Wow. So in other words, it's like the mastery of all of these different planes, if you will, in order to move amongst
any force. All forces are mitigated now.
Brother, I hope people are grasping the gravity of this conversation and what you're putting forward here. I sincerely hope that, you know, that people, if you yourself are a scientist, if you got a buddy that is, share this video, share these concepts, and, you know, the invitation is open. Let's get it in, because this is not the first step anymore, but it's a very early step of many to come. And, you know, stay tuned, because I mean, as brother Terrence Howard, you know, I got your backs, man. You know, so when it comes down to this, I'm rolling with you, fam. And whatever academic doors we need to knock on, pick the lock, kick in.
And it's because it's not about ego. This is about a necessity. This is a truth that every human being needs to know in order to be able to take care of their family and teach them properly. It allows us to have a more balanced existence with our universe and with ourselves. So you know, by knowing.
What's a real world implication of this knowledge? Like having this, and if you apply it, what could be one of the beneficial results for us?
Well, all of it is it's you're able to produce your own energy. You're able to sustain and coexist with our environment. You're able to, like I said, become a level 1 civilization and utilize all of the resources of the earth and benefit the earth and the creatures of the earth at the same time. So cosmically, karmically, that's a wonderful place. But you get to level 2, level 3, level 4, and being able to now visit and travel and experience other parts of the universe as a result of utilizing these truths and these tools to guide you in understanding universal fundamentals and functions. That's all these are. These are new tools, you know, to being able to predict and describe how things are going to react and what pressure condition you'll be in and how you might need to mitigate that pressure condition that might be inconsistent with you maintaining your homeostasis.
And so I guess the last point, so we could go ahead and wrap, brother. I know you said you had about 30 minutes left. You've also presented those as better models for the elements. Right now we're using the circle with the wooden posts coming out. You know, the circle is the nucleus and the wooden post, and then the little balls on the outside are like the electrons. But these seem to be superior and more accurate.
Yes, these combined with the wave conjugations that you saw, this is the electric, this is the constitution between the electric, which are the wave conjugations, and the mirror shapes, which are the magnetic field or the repulsive expression. So if you throw that last video up of the light spinning, because that's an example of the magnetic field, things expanding in comparison to the contraction of the electric field. So I want them to see all, and these are the 3 supersymmetric systems.
This one here, right?
Yep, and this is just made from 4 mirror shapes, which is the feminine component of the tetrahedron. This is and these are, we just put a string of lights down the center, but we stack 4 sets of, we put 4 of the mirror pieces together and we stacked them, you know, to where we had 8, you know, full octaves. And we ran 1 string of lights down the middle. But if you look at the refraction that's happening, that it looks like there's trillions of lights in there.
Yeah, man. And this is amazing. So this is a plastic, this is amazing, because I see the double helix of DNA in there. I mean,
All waveforms. It predicts all waveforms.
And this is something that you constructed
Yes.
based on these same principles.
Transcendental lighting.
This thing is beautiful. Hey, for right now on, no more Christmas trees, only these.
That's the magnetic, the repulsive, the expansive field in comparison to those Terrian wave conjugations, which is the electric. And the linchpin is the constitution between the two of them. The balance, and all of them are supersymmetrical systems. And like I said, mankind hasn't invented discovered one supersymmetrical system, because the platonic solids have only a discrete symmetry and have to be aligned in particular ways, and all of them can't fit together and make any sense without making mess. We might have to get the other part on another conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Terrence Dashon Howard, scientist.
No, His Excellency, Dr. Terrence Dashon Howard.
His Excellency, Dr. Terrence Dashon Howard. Let's talk about that real quick. So, because I threw that out there at the very first conversation. What is that about? His Excellency.
So, the King of Torah in Uganda, him and the Queen Mother, like a lot of Black people don't realize, we have Black kings and queens. Well, you should just throw up the paper and just read it. It's much simpler, because otherwise I'd just be talking about stuff rather than if you get that picture.
Yep. Here we go. Let's share my screen really quickly.
And I don't really care. I don't believe in the titles and all of that, but it means a lot. Oh no, show the other one. Show the other one. This is one of
this one.
Yes, bingo. If you read that, then it'll make more sense.
Okay, so this is a Word of Life Christian Fellowship, NGO, non-government organization, and special consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council, also known as ECOSOC. Says City of New York Peace Ambassadorial appointment. Whereas the United Nations is the highest international body, whereas Word of Life Christian Fellowship, otherwise called Word of Life Ministries International, and thereafter shall be called WOLMI, being the first and only full gospel organization to be accredited by the United Nations Economic and Social Council, whereas WOLMI has been given the rights to appoint ambassadors to the United Nations at large and to intergovernmental bodies, whereas the Executive Council, having vested in the President the authority to appoint, promote, and accredit kingdom ambassadors within the guidelines of its constitution, whereas His Excellency, the Right Reverend, the Honorable Dr. Philip S. Finn, Commander of the Most Distinguished Order of Extraordinary Ambassadors and Presidential General of WOLMI, hereby appoint His Excellency, Dr. Terrence Dashon Howard, as a peace ambassador with all rights and privileges pertaining thereto of being an ambassador, whereas he has the right to use the title His Excellency before his name. Whereas the title ambassador is after the order of Ephesians 6:20 and from the Kingdom of God Constitution according to 2 Corinthians 5:20. Under my hand and Executive Council of WLMI, on the 25th day of March of 2023, the Right Reverend Dr. the Honorable Philip S. Finn and the Reverend Dr. the Honorable Sharon J. Baquedo Finn, Senior Executive Vice President.
So that's where the title comes, which I'm proud. I'm very proud of being able to, like when being referred to as His Excellency, because it's been so much mess thrown on my name. And the doctor comes from the actual honorary doctorate that I received from South Carolina State University. I know I said on Jimmy Kimmel that I had a degree in chemical engineering or a doctorate in chemical engineering, but I spoke thinking that I had to live up to something with somebody, and I don't need that. Because what they have a doctorate in is a doctorate in falsehood and lie. But I participated and lied in that. But I did receive an honorary doctorate from South Carolina, but what I've done with chemistry, what I've done with physics, what I've done with geometry, with math, for itself, engineering, materials engineering, it speaks for itself.
Yep. And so part of my plan, brother, is to have those degrees that are, that match your merit and, your productivity, to be conferred upon you, beyond the honorary status. And so stay tuned. That part is loading. And I've got a PhD in clinical psychology. So even somebody who has gone through the rigor of doing that, I have no problem acknowledging you as a doctor because of the works and what you have produced. And so I'm not ego tripping like that. I know some people, he's not a doctor. I mean, based on what he's done, maybe he hasn't gone through that same process and got that, but he's definitely productive, probably more productive than
those people. I'm like, since you say that I'm not a fighter because I didn't go through your training camp, get in the ring. We can do it with gloves on. We can do MMA. We can do it bare knuckle. We can do whatever you want to do. We can debate this stuff and see who comes out on top. And let's see if your years of training has better equipped to discuss universal fundamentals.
It's kind of like
it's going to be a head cutting.
It's kind of like Rocky versus Drago. You in there lifting bales of hay, they on the high-tech equipment. And what I'm gonna do, I'm about to go and I'm gonna grow me an afro, I'm gonna blow it out Don King style. I'm gonna start promoting this fight, brother. Since he's so focused on getting in that ring.
I'm just ready to play. I'm ready to. Truth is necessary. It's time for it. We're dying. This planet is dying as a result of it. Multiple species are dying as a result of it. I'm not going to allow it till the games are over. Let's get
to quote the great philosopher Dick Gregory. He says, "Playtime is just about over." We're done.
That's true.
Appreciate you, man. Love you for living the life that you live. I look forward to this continuing and what our next steps are about to be. This is phenomenal.
God bless, bro.
Take care, man. Peace. All right, y'all. See y'all next.